Hello, beautiful, wonderfully crafty friends. It's Queen Katherine back in the studio today, and we're going to work on episode 2 of the Alternative Substrates to Yupo series. And episode 2 involves switch plates. Here are some examples of some of the switch plates that I created while making this video. Some of them we will go over in the video, and some of them are just examples. The flower garden was very fun to create. I'm sorry, that was my dog. But there are a lot of different things that you can do with switch plates, and they are very easy to work with when you work with alcohol inks on them. They are a fantastic substrate to work on and much, much cheaper than Yupo. I think I got 10 wall switch plates for $8 or something, and Yupo, as you know, is much more expensive than that. And you only need a few supplies, which are the normal supplies for working on Yupo or anything else. So let's use some 91% alcohol, and you're going to need your alcohol inks. You're going to need switch plates, and you're going to need, for this technique, a paintbrush and these little micro applicators, which I will include in the description below. So the first thing you're going to want to do is clean off your switch plate with some 91% isopropyl alcohol, just to make sure that everything is removed, fingerprints and dust and whatever else accumulated on these switch plates during their journey to your house. So wipe them down really well with the alcohol ink. And here's my first example of creating a flower. Now, I am not creating a finished project with these flowers. I'm only showing you some examples of flowers that you can create. And this is the first one. You just take a paintbrush and you put alcohol ink on your paintbrush. I used a number 10 paintbrush. And sop up some alcohol ink. And then place your paintbrush on the switch plate and just wiggle it around in a circular motion. So it's just a lot of wiggling. And that creates the outer edge so that you don't get a straight edge. So just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. If you have too much alcohol ink, it makes it difficult, like I do on this second flower. It makes it difficult to get those little wiggle marks. The wiggle marks showed up much better on my first flower than they did on my second flower. But you just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle all the way around. And it creates these nice highs and lows in your ink. And it's very, very easy. Now the second flower is real similar to the first. So you're just going to want to dip your paintbrush into the alcohol ink again and do a similar motion, but you're going to want to go further around. These almost remind me of mums. So you just go all the way around in a circle and you do the same wiggling type motion. You just pull as you do the wiggle motion. Very simple. And you can add many, many layers to these flowers. Another thing you could do is go back in with just some plain alcohol and do the same wiggling motion, and you would wind up with some incredible highlights and lowlights. But you can see where I kind of added a center to this flower. So you've got the outer edge and then the center is a little bit darker. And it looks really beautiful when you use other colors, when you use different but complementary colors. So you just go all the way around. And like I said, you can use 91% isopropyl alcohol to create some highlights and lowlights in these flowers, or you can use different colors. Maybe make the inside a blue if you're going to use purple, or use red and yellow, or red and orange, or orange and yellow, or any of those colors. But the idea is to do a center and an outer portion of petals. So let's start on another flower. And here I'm using those micro applicators again. These things are fantastic and they're so cheap. I think you can get, I got like 1,200 of them for $8 or $10. They're really, really cheap, and they work so well with alcohol ink. They don't pick up too much ink, but they pick up just the right amount. So as you can see, I'm just creating a circle using the same kind of back and forth or wiggling motion that I used in the other flowers. And I should have done these bigger, but these are just an example for you, just to give you some ideas of jumping off points if you want to make some switch plates and flower combinations. So this is just one example. It's kind of like a marigold in a way. So I used orange for the outer petals, and I'm going to grab another micro applicator, and I'm going to use blue for the inside petals just to give it some contrast. And you can see how that really picks up the contrast well. It works a lot better to use darker colors on the inside and lighter colors on the outside, but I'm going to show you, of course, I'm going to do the exact opposite of what I just said. I'm going to show you doing it the opposite way here on this flower. And as long as you leave a white space and don't completely go over it with the darker color, then you're okay. But that's filling in that flower with some orange in the same back and forth motion. You just wiggle till you giggle. Keep on wiggling. Now I'm using different alcohol inks from Marabou. I'm not using the Ranger line for these. And I had forgotten that the gold doesn't show up very well. It's not that striking gold that Tim Holtz puts out. So I filled the insides of these flowers with some gold, and in real life you can see it, but it's really hard for the camera to pick up. So the camera didn't pick it up as well as I wished that it would have. But I want to warn you, I love Marabou inks. They're wonderful. But I just want to forewarn you that they're not, the metallics are not as metallically metallic as Tim Holtz's are. So don't expect, they're just a lighter metallic version. So don't expect that great contrast when you use Marabou inks. All of their inks are wonderful and you can see how vibrant they are, but they just don't, the metallics just don't shine like the ones from Tim Holtz or even the ones from the Pinata line by Jacquard. Marabou metallics are just not that bright. So here I'm creating, we always call them firework flowers. I'm not sure of the name of the real flower. Chrysanthemum, maybe? I don't know why that just popped into my head. But they have all of those tiny little petals that shoot out from the middle. So I created a couple of those. And here I'm creating something kind of like a daisy. And as you can see, you just use the paintbrush and just touch your paintbrush to the switch plate, and it leaves these beautiful marks, these beautiful petals. And I wanted to let you know this video is sped up to 1 3/4 time. I don't craft this fast nearly at all, but I don't want to waste your time, so I went ahead and sped this up because it can get tedious watching somebody just do all of these alcohol ink processes. So I'm just now adding some more color. Here I'm using some green. I'm going to do the stems. And I do realize that this is not something that you would want to put up in your home or anywhere else. It really is just a conglomeration of different flower techniques that you can use. So no, I don't think that this was some beautiful creation that I plan on showcasing in my home. It's really just an idea for people to jump off with, here are some flowers you can use. And they would be beautiful if you created a skyline background, like the floral garden that I showed at the beginning of the video. If you created the blue skyline and then the green on the bottom, and then put these flowers in, any of these flowers in between where the grass and the sky meet, you would have a beautiful creation. So there are some different flowers that you can use. And the last kind of idea was just to poke some little leaves in there, some little almost like Queen Anne's lace. So let's try moving on. Let's move on to doing a background. And I have shaken some green on this switch plate, trying to get it to move around. And I used this little micro applicator to rub back and forth just to create some texture in the background, some movement. So it's not just all plain green. It's got variations, and you don't wind up seeing the lines, see how they kind of meld into each other. It turns into a beautiful piece. So that was just to create some texture and some movement. Let's add some more alcohol ink. And we really just want to cover the whole switch plate. That's the idea here. I probably should have used some blending solution to get the ink to move a little more. But for some reason I didn't. I just used alcohol ink and tried to cover the switch plate that way. So I'm going to tip and tilt the switch plate so that the inks move. They move and groove with each other. Woohoo! You want those inks to flow and cover that switch plate, but you want it to happen in an organic way. So you don't really want to use a paintbrush or something to move it around, because you will wind up with streaks and marks. And I really just wanted this to be an organic type. I wanted it to have an organic type feel. So just tilt it and move it around. You kind of tilt it and wait for the inks to move, and then tilt it another way and let them move another way. But it couldn't be any easier. You could do this with kids. This would be a great activity to do with kids. And for this, you may want to wear gloves. I did get some staining on my hands. It was easily removed when I put some alcohol on a paper towel and just wiped my hands off. But you may want to wear gloves for this process. So I'm really just waiting for the alcohol ink to spread and move. And there I go with some squirts of alcohol from a mister bottle. And that creates a little bit of a different texture. You get almost these little tiny circles when you use a mister bottle full of alcohol. But it is an easy way to get these to move. It also, however, lightens your inks, so keep that in mind. If you're looking for dark ink, you really just need to use straight alcohol ink, maybe a little bit of blending solution, but not much, because it's gonna, anytime you add alcohol or blending solution to your alcohol inks, it does lighten them. And you can see that this is lighter, especially on that right side. It's lighter than it was when I first started. So I'm gonna use my dryer to dry this off a little bit. And there's an easy background for you. You can make it covered as much as you want, or you can leave it uncovered in spots. It's totally up to you. It's a very forgiving process. You could even go back in with some alcohol on a paper towel and dab at it and remove some alcohol ink in different places. So this is just, I'm putting some flowers on here just to give you an idea of what you can do with a background. I'm sure you can think of a million other ideas, but this was just an idea showing something being applied to the top of this alcohol ink background. And you could just leave the background as it is. You don't have to add anything on top of it. That would be a beautiful accent to a room. I know that in my bedroom, I have a bright pink wall, which won't surprise anybody who knows me. And I thought about doing one of these switch plates in bright pink to match my wall, just as a nice little accent. So I'm adding some flowers, the daisy type flowers, and whether you put the petals closer together or leave a bigger space in the middle really changes the feel, and it's an easy way to change up your little flower garden. So we've got the flowers almost finished. I think I do one more. I apologize if you can hear my son's TV in the background. Usually I do these voiceovers at like 4 o'clock in the morning, but I didn't get it done, this morning, so we have to deal with what we've got now. I wanted to get this video loaded and available on YouTube, so I just decided to go for it. So I'm adding some centers to these flowers, and just using that micro applicator and some alcohol ink, I'm just dotting the centers of the flowers. Super easy, super cute. And this is kind of what I was showing in that last piece when I was dotting with the little dots all over. It makes little groups of dots, makes a really cute way to add some filler flowers. So I'm going to add some flower centers in a different color now, hoping that you can see them a little better, but the camera really didn't pick any of this up very well. I should have had the camera closer to the desk, I think. I'm still pretty new to YouTube, so I'm still learning how these things work, and I appreciate you guys sticking with me while I make all of my mistakes, because there have been a lot of them, but you guys have stuck with me. So here's how you can fix mistakes. Look at that. I sprayed it with some 91% isopropyl alcohol, got a paper towel, and sprayed that sucker down and just wiped it down with the paper towel. And it's completely and ready. It's completely clean and ready to go for another alcohol ink experiment. So don't worry about messing up if you're going to make one of these switch plates. They're super easy to clean up and start all over again on. Super easy. Even with Posca pen, which is one of the videos I forgot to include in this episode. But I used Posca pen to doodle on the background of one of these, and even that came off really well with alcohol. So no matter what you put on these little switch plates, just use some alcohol, wipe it off, and you're ready to go. Now the next technique we're going to explore is foiling, and this is also super easy. I don't know what my obsession is with the purple flowers and the green backgrounds, but stick with me. I don't know why I kept making them all the same, but I did. So here we do another background, and we're going to let it kind of tip and tilt again. And you can do this in any color alcohol ink that you want, and you can do this with any brand of alcohol ink that you have. You don't need to use Marabou inks. You can use Ranger, you can use Pentart, you can use Marabou. Any of the alcohol inks will work for this. They'll work for any of these techniques that I'm showing. So let's cover that switch plate real well. And I'm just tipping and tilting again, letting the inks flow and combine where they want to. I love the look of that. Just like that. I think that would be a really pretty switch plate. And you could foil at this point. If you don't want to cover your entire switch plate with alcohol, you could foil with it being just like this. That would work as well. Or you could use two colors. You could lay down one color in your background and then do another color over the top of it and then do your foiling. That also would work. There are so many different ways that you can do this. I'm really just showing you some basic ideas as a jumping off point for you to get your feet wet and get those creative juices flowing and get going. I know it can be intimidating when you're not quite sure how these things work, and I don't want you to be intimidated. I want you to just jump in with both feet and try it. The worst thing that could happen is that you screw up and you have to take some alcohol and wipe it down, dry it off, and start again. No harm, no foul. There's no permanent damage that can be done, and you're not wasting anything, because you can always create over it again. So I'm adding some more alcohol ink, really trying to get this switch plate covered. And you can see that the inks move and meld on their own without me even having to do anything. And I just love the dimension that they create all on their own. It doesn't take any work on your part to get them to do that. And you come up with these beautiful results. And here I'm torn because I like the wispy kind of ethereal look that we have up at the top, the real soft look, but I also like the look that we have on probably the bottom 3/4 of the switch plate. I love how that looks also. So I'm always torn between how I should do it because I love both of those looks so much. Excuse me. So I'm just trying to cover the sides. And it's pretty well covered. So we're going to leave that alone, and I'm waving my hand over it trying to dry it before I decided to get out my dryer and dry it that way. Now, because we have several layers of the alcohol inks on the switch plate, some of them dry faster than others. So the part that has the multiple layers doesn't dry as well. It remains kind of tacky. If you've worked with alcohol inks, you have to know what I'm talking about. So there are lines and kind of areas that remain tacky while the rest of it is dry. And that's what we're going to use to foil. We're going to use that to our advantage. So I'm just going to clean off my desk again. I just squirted some 91% alcohol in a paper towel and wiped my desk off. I'm using a nonstick craft mat. And I'm going to place my piece of foil over the top, and I'm going to rub it fast and not too hard. It's a little hard, but not very hard. The idea is you want to create a little bit of heat by rubbing it. So I rub it fast and kind of hard to get the areas to stick that are going to stick. So I haven't done anything magical. I haven't done anything difficult. I just have rubbed this foil down with my fingers. And there's the reveal. Isn't it gorgeous? I love this technique. It got all of that veining, and then it got an area down toward the bottom of the switch plate too. You never know what you're going to get when you use foiling. I just love how this turned out. So let's look at a neutral color switch plate with some copper added. So I chose to do neutral colors only because I never do anything with neutral colors, which you probably have observed. I normally use pink, blue, and purple. That's what I use for everything. That's how I dress. That's the colors that I choose when I make art. I just always gravitate toward those colors. So I made a conscious decision to do something with more neutral colors because I know not everyone loves the pink, purple, and blue. So we're squirting on, I know I used some vanilla and then the 2 colors of brown that Marabou puts out. I used a light brown and a dark brown. And then that yellowish color is their vanilla. And we're just tipping and tilting again to get those colors to run together. It's already beautiful. I love it when the colors swirl together. So here's the darkest brown. And I think, I'm not sure if I added black to this or not. We'll have to see. I can't remember. I thought about adding black, but I was afraid it would overpower the piece. So I'm back to adding some lighter brown again. And you can do that with alcohol inks. You can start light and go dark and then add light back in. You can do it any way that you want. So I'm just trying to get all the areas covered, all the sides. That's a beautiful switch plate, just like it is. And here I'm adding the light brown. And now here's the copper. You have to, just like the Ranger Tim Holtz range, you have to shake these. They have the ball in the bottom. And the mixatives, oh, I do add some black. Look at that. But the the copper, the metallics in this line must be shaken right before you use them, just like with the Tim Holtz Ranger line. So you just shake it until you hear that mixative ball shake back and forth. And we're adding some copper mixative to it. I guess Marabou doesn't call theirs mixatives, they just call them metallics. So we're adding some copper metallic to this piece, and look at how that changes the piece up. It kind of mutes that black back. It's a beautiful complement to the colors that I had already put down. The mixatives do come out a little bit thicker though, and move in kind of a thicker row than the thinner plain alcohol inks, so be aware of that. But they do that in any brand, but I've noticed it's especially pronounced in the Marabou brand. So I'm just giving the copper a minute to swirl around and mix with the other colors, and I think that's just beautiful. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which I've titled Beautifully Bold, because we're back to the colors that I'm most comfortable with. Now, I started this part of the video with these lines, just showing you that if you wanted to create a striped switch plate, you could. You totally could. Because the lines hold their form until you pick it up and move it. So as long as you leave it flat on your desk, it won't, the colors won't run and mix together like they do when you tip and tilt. So that's totally an option. But I wanted to cover this entire switch plate with some pink. At least it's not green again. At least I'm switching up the colors finally. So we're going to cover this up with some pink. And we're going to let it mold. Yeah, not mold. We're going to let it meld together. Let the colors swirl and do their thing. The inks. And I cut a lot of this out where the alcohol inks merged together because you didn't need to sit there and see that. But I did squirt it with some alcohol from my mister bottle. And that helps to get these colors, this ink, moving. So let's add some blue. And all I'm doing is shaking blue down on it. I'm not doing it in any particular pattern or way. I'm just making sure that I get some on, kind of over all of the switch plate. And let's put some purple on there too. I didn't want to add too much purple because the blue and the pink would create purple also. But I did want to throw some purple on there. And let's add some more pink. You can never have too much pink, my friends. Now here's the rainbow solution, the rainbow alcohol ink. And it's an iridescent glitter alcohol ink that I just love. I love this stuff. So see, I started to put the cap on and nope, we're going to add some more. Because you can never have too much of this alcohol ink. It is beautiful. It is iridescent. It has sparkle to it. It's wonderful. So let's put a couple of squirts of alcohol on there. And then you just kind of leave it alone to do its thing. Pick it up. Tip it and tilt it. But really, you're not doing anything to... You don't have to have any artistic quality at all to do this. Quality? You don't have to have any artistic... You don't have to have an artistic bone in your body is what I'm trying to say. So I had cut out the inks merging together, but see, I didn't do anything other than tip and tilt it, and see what a beautiful wall switch switch plate you wind up with in the end, and you can see that gorgeous iridescent shimmer to it. I love that stuff. So here are the two switch plates together, and I think they're both beautiful, although completely different. So our last technique is the wiSpy technique. Now, I love to do this on the back of Kirkland photo paper, so I thought, why not try this on a switch plate? Well, it is incredibly difficult to do this on a switch plate because the way that the switch plate curves. Switch plates are not flat, they have a curve to them. So trying to do this technique when I'm not very skilled or very talented with this technique at all. I just started learning it, and so I don't have a lot of experience doing this. So I have a feeling that if someone like Lori Brewer were to sit down and work on this, she might find it difficult to do. In fact, here's a challenge. I challenge Lori Brewer to create a wiSpy switch plate. Do you hear that, Lori? I'm challenging you. The gauntlet has been thrown down. Come on, make a switch plate for us so we can see whether you have difficulty and what you come up with. Because I would love to see how a switch plate could be done in the hands of someone like Lori Brewer. I'm sure that she would create something so much more beautifully magical than what I created. But I decided to try to create a switch plate in the wiSpy alcohol ink technique because I love that technique. And it really is gorgeous in the end when it's done right, which I'm not sure it's done right on this switch plate. But I tried it. I did it. And that's my advice to all of you is try it. You never know what you're going to wind up with. And I think that alcohol inks are such a forgiving medium. You would be surprised at what you can come up with. I have no doubt, even if you've never picked up a bottle of alcohol ink before, I have no doubt that you could create an amazing masterpiece. I just have no doubt. They're very forgiving, very easy to work with. So all I'm doing here is putting down my 91%, and then I'm putting down some color and using my Revlon ceramic airbrush, which I will put in the description below. But I'm just using my dryer to blow these inks and this 91% around. It's just really hard to do before it slides off the side of the switch plate. So I just keep using the 91%. I put a drop of ink down and blow that out. And then I mostly use the 91% alcohol to continue blowing that one drop of ink out. I don't keep laying down ink because I'd wind up with way too much. So I put the original ink drop down, and since then all I've done is add the 91% alcohol and blown it out. So now we're going to add some purple. And it's the same kind of thing. You put down a drop of purple and then you keep using the 91% to blow it around. And I just try to add my 91% in places where I have more ink. I try to just break up the ink. That's really all there is to it. So we're going to add some blue to this side. And I just take my dryer and try to jump back and forth from side to side while I dry it. It doesn't always work that way. I tend to go in circles. But the idea is to just keep the ink or the isopropyl alcohol moving so that when it dries, it leaves these little wispy tendrils. And you can see I have a darker area of blue right there. That's why I added some isopropyl. And now I'm going to pick it up and tilt it before I use my dryer to see if I can get some of that spread out. And now I bring my dryer in. It's very, very difficult to pick up this process this wispy alcohol ink technique. Lori Brewer does an amazing job with it. I've never seen anybody create with alcohol inks the way that she does. She does an amazing job with it. I'm just learning, so I'm really faltering. But I know that if you pick this up, if you picked up some alcohol ink, you could also work on this technique if it interests you at all. It just requires a lot of patience and a lot of practice. A lot of practice. So I'm adding more ink in different places and using my 91% to kind of blow it out. You can see that I'm moving the dryer back and forth from one side to another so that it doesn't pool and dry in a pool. Because that's what you don't want when you work with the wispy technique. You don't want things drying in pools. You want to blow the ink out and have it leave a trace and then move it back in toward the center. So did this switch plate work out exactly the way I had planned it in my mind? No, not a bit. I had a much more wispy, ethereal look planned out in my mind, but I'm happy with the way that it turned out. I still think it's a fun piece. And in the right room, I think it would be a really cool switch plate. And I had originally thought I was just going to do 2 diagonal corners with the ink, but then I got a little carried away and wanted to see if I could do the whole thing, which is why I'm doing the whole thing. That was not my original intention. But it was so hard working on this curved surface that I just made a game out of it and kept wanting to see if I could make this ink really blow out the way I wanted it to. So I just kept working on it and kept working on it. And finally, I had the whole switch plate finished. But it was a fun piece to do. And it was in my favorite colors, which I really love working with. So I keep adding alcohol in spots where there's a lot of ink. And then I give it a second and I blow it out. That's all there is to it. Or I try to blow it out, is what I should say. You can see the ink moving around as I chase it with the dryer. And now I basically have that one end complete. I just want to kind of do some touch-ups. And you know, even after I finished it for this video, I still played with it a little bit. You can do that with alcohol ink. You can go back and rework things that you don't like or rework things that you think you could do a little differently. You can do that whether it's the same day or 2 weeks from now. You can always go back and rework your alcohol inks. So the idea behind this series is just to give you an idea that there are other substrates besides Yupo that you can use for alcohol inks. And switch plates seem to be made for alcohol inks. They're really a great surface and really take the ink well. So any technique you can come up with is perfect for the switch plate. If it involves alcohol inks, you're good to go. And I do have a lot more surface ideas that we're going to cover in upcoming videos, which is why I made this a series. So I think when I'm finished, I should have somewhere around 10 or 12 episodes giving you 10 or 12 alternative substrates to use besides Yupo. And hopefully that will get your creative wheels turning and give you some ideas on things that you can use besides Yupo to work with alcohol inks, because there are a lot of surfaces that these work well with. So here I'm going to add the metallic, which is the brass by Jacquard. It's the Pinata line by Jacquard. And I add a little bit of 91%. And then I tried to put one drop down, but my dropper doesn't work very well, my little needle nose dropper. So I always wind up putting down more than I mean to. So I put down a little bit too much brass, but that's okay. No reason to panic. We'll just add some 91% and keep blowing it out. And that's how you fix that mistake. If you accidentally pour a puddle of metallic color on your piece, don't freak. Just use your 91% and keep blowing it out. And you won't wind up with those real shiny little puddles. You'll just wind up with some beautiful metallic veining. And I love that look. I don't know about you, but I think that look is beautiful. So I'm still blowing the ink out. And every time I find a little puddle of the metallic, I just add some more isopropyl and blow it out some more. So I added a little more of the brass pinata, or pinata brass, however you want to say it. And every time it dries and stops flowing, I add some 91% and blow it out some more. I think that's the easiest way to explain how to work with this doing the wiSpy technique. I love how the brass undulates with the other colors, and you wind up with this really cool veining wispiness. I just love how Pinata's brass works with this technique. And I have not noticed that the Ranger or Tim Holtz brand works this way. It's only with the Pinata brand for some reason, the Pinata line. I think that the mixatives from the Tim Holtz line are too thick to be able to move the way that the Jacquard Pinata line are able to move. So I'm just continuing to add the 91% and blowing it around. I know you're sick of hearing me say that by now because I'm sick of saying it, but that's all I keep doing. So there's nothing exciting for me to add. Every time it starts to dry, you just want to add another drop of ink and blow it some more. Sorry, my dog is making noises. But that's what I end up with. And I'm so glad that you joined me for this adventure using alcohol inks on switch plates. I really, really hope that you learned something, and I hope that you found this a valuable use of your time. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't. I would love to have you as part of our YouTube family. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day. Take care. Bye.